Liz, it's hard to overstate how wild it is that there's a member of Congress who was unhoused and is now shaping policy. Way back in the day, you had to be a landlord to even vote, let alone win elected office. How did Representative Bush respond to the moratorium extension?
She grabbed her blankets and pillows, Krishna, and she spent 4 nights camped out on the Capitol steps, sleeping on the steps right here behind me, starting last Friday around when that eviction moratorium expired, Krishna. And she's practicing a different kind of politics here in D.C., which she has a new term for. Take a listen to our conversation. Congresswoman, explain the idea behind being out here on the steps.
Before I came to Congress, after I was elected, I said that when I got here, I would be a politicist. I'm an activist, and I was adding the politician to that. Before, when I would feel powerless or feel like something needed to happen, but I didn't feel like I knew how to make sure that our voices were heard, we would protest. We would, occupy or sit in. And that's what this was.
Yesterday, the administration announced that they are extending the eviction moratorium. Do you think that your activism helped bring about that change?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that if we would have gone home and just waited to see if something happened, it could have taken quite a while. I believe that the Biden administration and the CDC would have, tried to do something. For me, every single day that there was no moratorium, I knew that meant that thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people would be forced out of their homes. How can I go to my home knowing that there was something legislatively or some type of executive action that we as the representatives could have done to stop it?
There was a lot of finger pointing going on. Why wasn't the House able to extend this moratorium?
Right. So, first of all, 100% of Republicans just would not help. And I don't want to let them off and I understand people keep saying, oh, well, it was the House, it was the Democrats that should have done it. True. But that doesn't mean that none of the Republicans should be held accountable, because there are people in their communities as well that were going to be evicted from their homes. We did have some Democrats who felt like they just weren't in support of a moratorium. Some of them expressed that people need to figure out their situations. Some of them expressed that landlords are being lost in the conversation, and landlords need to be able to
pay their mortgage.
Yeah. And
do you think that's a fair argument?
In a way, because there is over $40 billion that's already allocated to be able to cover the cost. The money has been allocated, and it's just sitting. Only $3 billion out of the $46.5 billion allocated has been spent. And so we want the landlords, especially those small landlords, to know that we hear you. We want you to have the money to be able to pay those mortgages. It is up to the states and those local governments to make sure that they are doing the work, that they have the structure in place to be able to push that money out.
You have a very different life experience than a lot of members of Congress. Do you think that most members of Congress care about poor people in this country?
Most is relative, I guess. I think that there are members who do care, but I think that, and then there are members I believe that don't. There are members who don't understand it the same way that some others do. What it's like to be unhoused, what it's like to even just have this looming threat of eviction. And so they see it differently.
President Biden said that he's not sure if this new extension, this new 60-day extension, is going to pass constitutional muster. Should the president and members of Congress be promoting a legally questionable practice to extend the moratorium?
Absolutely. So right now, while we're trying to figure it out, do we then say we know for a fact that millions of people, will they be okay if we force them out? We know for a fact they will not. We know for a fact that many can die.
And this new eviction moratorium expires in another 60 days, Krishna. So the question for Congresswoman Bush and for the rest of Capitol Hill is what happens next? She says that she is going to be putting pressure on her fellow members of the House to create a longer term legislative solution to this eviction crisis in this country, which is something that is affecting people as this pandemic continues to get worse now with the Delta variant raging across the country.
And for people who might be facing eviction, how are they being informed to protect themselves in case a landlord tries to evict?
Well, this is something that Congresswoman Bush is tapping into her activist roots for. She is saying in her community, she is trying to find volunteers to help out and go door to door to homes where people might be evicted to let them know that they do have rights. And with this new moratorium extension, that they can stay in their homes, Krishna.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. That's Liz Landers in Washington, D.C.